Hi, and thank you for attending our presentation. I'm Brenna Campbell, the head of the Preservation and Conservation Department at Princeton University Library. Today, my colleague Stephanie Wiener and I will tell you about our work over the past few years to establish a pool of trained couriers for the library. In 2017, I was charged with leading a new exhibition loan task force to review and update practices around loans for exhibition, including policies and procedures for couriers. Before the formation of the task force, courier duties at the library were assigned on an ad hoc basis, with the curator for a given item often serving as its default courier. The library did not have documented standards or best practices for how outgoing loans were transported, or a consistent process for training new couriers. After doing considerable research and consulting with colleagues, the task force drafted the library's first courier policy, which you can see in part on the right-hand side of this slide. The new policy stipulated that couriers must receive training in order to serve in the courier pool, in addition to meeting other criteria. In the interim period where the new policy was adopted, but training had not yet been undertaken, the courier pool was limited to staff who had extensive experience with collection care, as well as previous experience with similar courier trips. This meant that by and large, the courier pool was limited to a handful of staff members in the Preservation and Conservation Department. With a growing number of loans being made, it was important to expand the pool as quickly as possible. The first step was to identify staff who would receive the training. We started by reaching out to the heads of the two collecting divisions of the library, which are Special Collections and Scholarly Collections and Research Services. We also identified additional preservation and conservation staff who did not have previous courier experience. Based on this list of candidates, we selected 10 staff members to participate in the first round of training. Our criteria for selection included interest in the program, previous collection care experience, and availability for travel. We wanted to keep the initial pool small enough that every member would have the opportunity to gain practical experience as a courier fairly quickly, and to reinforce that experience through regular courier trips. Once training participants were identified, they were asked to complete a courier questionnaire, which helped us collect information about the cohort's level of experience and comfort with courier duties, as well as any special skills such as fluency in other languages. The form also asked about availability for travel and confirmed that each participant had their supervisor's support. In preparation for the training, we created and updated resources to share. The Courier Manual is a 20-page document that walks new couriers through every step of the process, as well as providing useful advice and scenarios for discussion during the training. The manual is based on the Courier Training Framework and Manual first developed by the various European registrars groups around 2016. A newer version of these training resources was released in 2020 and is provided as a link at the end of this presentation. We also shared a copy of our Courier Policy and Procedures document, which describes the role and responsibilities of the courier, and a copy of our Courier Travel Checklist and Report, which is designed to be completed by the courier during the trip and used as the basis for the debrief after the trip is completed. Lastly, we provided each participant with the beginnings of a courier kit, which included useful tools like a power bank for charging a cell phone, a magnifier, and a strong handheld light. The kit is intended to be supplemented with other items on the list shown here and to be brought along on every trip. And with that, I will hand the presentation over to my colleague Stephanie, who will tell you about the training itself.
Thank you, Brenna. I am Stephanie Wiener, Exhibitions Registrar and Gallery Operations Manager for Princeton University Library. Once the initial courier pool was selected and participants filled out the questionnaire, we launched our inaugural courier training in the fall of 2019. This was an intensive one-day training. We began with some background information on what a courier is, why we send a courier with our loans, and key traits for a successful courier, such as remaining calm under pressure. We introduced different shipping methods and the pros and cons of each, such as hand carries, ground transportation via fine art shipper, and air freight. We reviewed all aspects of a courier trip, including ground shipping, airport screening, and unpacking and condition checks. We also discussed ways to anticipate what could go wrong and what to do after returning from a courier trip. The training also included several activities, such as completing a condition check and discussing possible problems that could come up and how to address them. One example scenario was arriving at the borrower's museum and discovering that the crate is too large to fit into the elevator to travel to the third floor gallery. The participants broke into small groups to discuss each scenario and presented their conclusions. We had two guest speakers. Sarah C. Smith, a highly experienced courier, presented on the real-life experience of being a courier, and Meg Colbert from Box Art, a New York-based crating and fine art shipping company, showed samples of packing materials, demonstrated packing methods, and discussed considerations for crate construction. You can see in the second picture that Meg brought a fantastic set of miniature crates with her to demonstrate different features to the group. After the one-day training was finished, we provided experiential training opportunities for the new Courier Pool members. Our goal for the experiential training is to start small and build upon the courier's growing experience. A new courier's first trip will not be traveling abroad, but a local trip with a simple installation such as strapping a book into its cradle or overseeing the hanging of a frame. To build the courier's experience before going on a trip, we break down the steps of a courier trip into learning stages that can be completed here at the library, such as attending a condition check and observing the packing of a loan. New couriers will then accompany a seasoned courier on a local trip and travel to the airport to see the screening and cargo process before taking an unaccompanied trip. It's important to note that because the costs associated with sending a second person are related to training rather than the courier trip itself, those costs are covered by Princeton. A courier's first unaccompanied trip will be local or regional before progressing to longer trips with an overnight stay, ride-along, or cross-country flight. By taking this approach, we're able to build skills, comfort, and confidence before sending a courier on a complicated installation or international trip. With the onset of COVID-19, we made the decision to put a moratorium on any new loan requests with exhibits opening prior to September 2021. At the same time, all existing loan requests were either canceled or pushed back by the borrowing institution. This moratorium also meant that our experiential training program for couriers and our next planned one-day training in spring 2020 were put on hold. Limited numbers of staff began to return to campus in July 2020, but their work was tightly focused on essential duties that could only be completed on site. Although all library staff returned to on-site work by August 2021, the majority of our meetings have remained on Zoom, making the kind of hands-on training we hope to carry out impossible. We have, however, been able to find ways to continue some elements of our experiential training during this time. With the impacts of COVID, we had to modify our loan program, which also resulted in modifications to the kinds of training experiences we were able to offer. Early on in the pandemic, the university imposed heavy restrictions on business and personal travel, which presented a challenge as we still had collections out on loan from before the pandemic. Our options for getting them back included using bookend couriers for international loans, hiring a professional courier, approving the loan return with no courier oversight, or providing courier oversight virtually. With a few exceptions, we used video conferencing to oversee the deinstallation and condition checking of our existing loans, and as we gained comfort with this approach, we continued to use it for new loans in 2021. Once we had the virtual courier process established, we incorporated it into our training. During training, a seasoned courier represents PUL on the virtual unpacking, condition check, and installation, and a member of the courier pool observes. The Exhibitions Registrar holds a debrief with the trainee courier after the call to ensure they feel prepared to attend a future virtual courier installation or deinstallation on their own. When conditions allow, we plan to reinstitute our day-long in-person training with guest speakers and hands-on activities, and to expand our courier pool. We also plan on piloting the courier checklist and report form that Brenna mentioned earlier, since it was developed for the first training, but has not yet been tested by new couriers. The checklist provides a step-by-step guide to the specifics of each trip, including contact information for the shipper and borrower, travel arrangements and itinerary, what to expect on the road, at the airport, and at the venue, and a place to keep notes and general feedback about the trip. We hope this overview of our process for introducing a formal courier training program was helpful for some of you who might be considering doing the same at your institution. While there are many useful resources available, we found the first two resources listed here to be really helpful for us. Another great resource, as Brenna mentioned earlier, is to ask your colleagues how they approach training at their institutions. Thank you for all of your attention, and please feel free to ask me questions or to reach out to our department at preservation@princeton.edu. Thank you.